All right. Welcome to the stream. It's Wednesday morning, nice and early on the West Coast, at least where I am. I guess if you are on the East Coast, you're already easing into lunchtime, right? Or you already had lunch? 10:30. Yeah, right. Yep. Today we are working in Ableton's Operator again. We will be making some what I would call bread and butter sounds. That is to say, the sort of the daily drivers, the kind of toolbox sounds. So we're not looking for anything necessarily really super crazy or radical today, although sometimes when you are working on even relatively simple things, you end up with some pretty wild stuff. And so if we end up in some weird and wild territory, then that's where we will end up. But today is, I figured again, would just be a good opportunity to um, work on some relatively straightforward and I don't want to say basic, but relatively uh, standard sounds. But now, and I should also clarify, of course, that what comprises a standard sound or bread and butter sound is going to be different for everyone. Um, I'm obviously working on sounds that would be kind of standard slash bread and butter for me. If you are a drum and bass musician or a funk musician or a pop musician, then I think that those sounds, some of them, there's going to be some overlap across all of those. Um, might be a fun project for someone to map out where, how many different genres and adjacent genres, how much of the sounds overlap and things like that. But I'm not going to be doing any of that, but maybe someone could do that sometime for fun times. But I'll just be working on some sounds that are again bread and butter for me. Um, so last time I did this, I did do a little intro to Ableton. I probably will skip that unless whoever is in here with me wants to pipe up and say, I actually don't know Ableton at all. Please run me through the basics of it, in which case I can do that. But otherwise, I think we can just focus on Operator and getting some interesting sounds from it. I was thinking about doing a some kind of variation on the classic lately bass patch, which is kind of an infamous house music bass patch. It's been used in a bunch of different stuff. I think it's most famous for being used in a bunch of house tracks. Um, and it's also known, or there's a variation of it known as solid bass, which is on the DX7. Lately, bass is from the TX81Z. We don't need to try and recreate it exactly or anything like that, but it's just kind of a plucky bass sound. I mean, it's just got a sustain on it, as I recall, but um, plucky all the same. So, okay, so interesting. A little bit of noise on that when I move the envelope up. Sorry, just distracted by little nonsensical things like that sometimes. I do have a Red Bull here. I may not be 100% fully caffeinated at this point. So let's get on that and see if we can't get our blood caffeine level up to the right balance. All right. So I did do a little research and figured out what this is the algorithm that Lately Bass uses. And then for waveform uh, three, is it three? One of the waveforms uses a different alternate waveform. I can't remember which one it is now. I did have it up on screen. I've got a link somewhere, but let's just wing it and see if we can figure out something similar enough to not matter too much. Okay, so what I did here on this wave is I just drew in, curiously, in the, I'm pretty sure I missed that. That's two, three, four. Yeah, in the TX-A1Z manual, there is actually, shows the partials for some of the waveforms, and I was trying to recreate this one from memory and looking at the waveform display, I did not get there, but you know, again, we're not trying for an absolute replica. We're just trying to get, I don't know, somewhere in the neighborhood. Excuse me. Okay. Probably should explain a little better what I'm doing here. So if you're not familiar with FM synthesis, it is a method of creating complex waveforms by modulating simple waveforms or simpler waveforms by other waveforms, all at audio rate. So frequently in synthesis, you will use an LFO, for example, to give vibrato to a signal to another oscillator. So you use an LFO, a low frequency oscillator, to modulate, change up and down the frequency of a oscillator, and that gives you vibrato at rates up to about 12, 14 hertz, something like that. And then above that, as you get into the audio range starts at 20 hertz technically, but already once you get into the 15, 17, 18 hertz, like it starts to be moving so fast, even though you can't hear it oscillating, it does start to, I think, create some of the sidebands that you get with FM, and so it starts to sound less like vibrato and more like FM on some level. And then once you get into the audio range, it's actual FM, and produces a bunch of very complex tones. So basically, when you move the pitch up and down fast enough, it starts to sound like there's other harmonics and pitches going on in there. or it doesn't sound like they are created by the modulation. And so that's how you get complex. Take a sine wave, modulate another sine wave at audio rate, and you get something that is much more complex than a sine wave as your output. And if you stack 3 or 4 of those, or 6 of them, then that's where you have DX style FM synthesis. As a little technical note, it's actually phase modulation, not frequency modulation. Main reason being that it's a lot cheaper computationally to modulate phase than frequency. And you also get some weird frequency artifacts when you modulate the frequency that you don't get as much of in phase modulation, so it's cleaner. But that's really neither here nor there. I'm a big nerd, and so I can't help but mention it when it comes up. But yeah, so basically this is just a way to use a bunch of simple waves to make more complex waves. This synthesizer is a 4 operator. An operator is an oscillator with an amplitude envelope and basically amplitude envelope attached to it. So and an amp technically, but just an amplitude envelope that can control its amplitude over time. And by stacking these up again, you can make some really crazy sounds and get a lot of flexibility as a synth programming methodology. So these settings here are ratios, and you get different harmonics depending on what ratio you can hear. So I'll just start at 1. So it's here. Actually, we'll turn all these off too. Let's keep this nice and simple. Okay. So that's 2 sine waves modulating each other. You're hearing only one. And ratio is 1 to 1, so they're playing the same pitch, in other words. So now this is 2, this is a 1, so this is an octave higher. It's twice as high as this. And you can see how that becomes. So 1, 2, kind of becomes woodier, kind of more hollow. 3, again. You can hear the kind of harmonics move up till at the very top of the range, you just get a bunch of weird crystalline high harmonics. Oh, that reminds me, let me get put a spectrum analyzer on the end of this too, so you can just see what's going on. You can kind of see the harmonics move up as we see. There we get, when you do a half, you get essentially a sub-oscillator. You see there's the second peak has appeared below the fundamental. Fundamental's still 199 for this one. Now there's the second peak behind it. Back to 1, and yeah, and now that's gone. There's no longer that peak back there. Now there is. I'm gonna keep messing with this. 3, 5. That's actually kind of close, at least to what I remember. Maybe the 4th one was in there too. I do not recall, but I guess I can explain this little feature here. So here, what you can do, and this is kind of a unique feature for Operator, you can, for any of these, you can make a little custom waveform by drawing in the partials directly. and then it goes to a user here. Now you can also select a bunch of different waveforms in here. But yeah, so you can create custom waveforms by defining the partials here. And yeah, get some different I think I actually want some I think I'll actually leave the main envelope as kind of an organ style envelope, although with a little bit of release. Even though I would intend for this generally to be played in a more percussive manner, like so. Just because it gives you the option of playing it this way in a sustained manner, and B, when I start playing with the envelopes like so, oops, then it doesn't feel right. Do you know what I mean? Actually, so I say that, and then I start playing around, and I'm like, oh, I kind of like this. Maybe I can get decay. I mean, you can hear that this is starting to shape up into pretty interesting bass sound. Maybe a little rough on the... Maybe that's a little more like it. You gotta decide how much of the, how much of the attack tone you want in there. Okay, let's do a little MIDI clip here. Something like that. Let's just see what this sounds like. There you go. Just a little higher. Okay. right, you can kind of see what's going on there. You have to excuse me. I actually have to step out for just a second. I hate to do this, but hey, Swarm, how's it going? Uh, yeah, well, it's good to have the option to do it. We'll mess around with it a little bit. I might leave that playing. I know it's going to get repetitive, but it's probably better than just staring at an empty screen. If anyone pops into the chat room, maybe you can entertain them for me for just a minute. I've just run out to use the bathroom real quick. It is out of nowhere and it's suddenly urgent. I had a lot of coffee this morning, so I have to get rid of some of the extra liquid. I'll be right back. Okay, sorry about that. Like I said, drank a lot of coffee in the morning. I did go before I started. I don't know if you have kids. You always tell them, hey, before we get in the car, before we go, to school, whatever, make sure you stop and take care of all that. Sometimes, it doesn't matter. That's what I'm trying to say. All right, so I know this is not the world's most exciting bass line, but since it's playing here, we can also see what, we can play with this in real time is what I'm trying to say here. So we're on operator 3, we're just playing with both the level and ratios. It's kind of interesting, getting some, kind of like that. Let's see about the sequence too. know if I'd actually ever use a bass line like that or not. I mean, like that specific sequence, but it gives you an idea of what it might sound like in action. Yeah. Sounds pretty decent up in these higher registers as well. That's like a nice octave bass. Yeah. So that sounds pretty decent. I think I actually might just save this one as it is. And so if you've been watching this from the beginning, you'll see that this is a pretty pure FM patch. I did not use the filter at all. There's still a lot of controls we haven't really touched, which is fine. You don't have to touch every control every time. So LFO wise, we probably do not want vibrato on our bass. That would be a pretty unusual use case. I guess we could do something weird like make it alter the filter and then modulate it by LFO. LFO amount 100%. Turn it on for the filter. So now you can, just because you can, I added a, on the mod wheel here. Let me show you what I did. Okay, so click here and select mod wheel. This is its mod matrix of sorts. I was reading a thing, actually, that's linked in the description of this video. There's a link to an article on Robert Henke's website about the development of Operator. And he mentions in there that he says this is not a mod matrix, but I mean, it is a mod matrix. So I don't know. It's maybe not a complete mod matrix, but here's modulation sources and here's modulation destinations. That's a mod matrix in my book. So, your mileage may vary, whatever. But what I did is I took mod wheel, connected it to LFO A, amount, LFO amount, not LFO A for amount, burp. Anyway, LFO amount to 100%. So in other words, the mod wheel controls the LFO amount 100%. So if the mod wheel is at 0, you get 0 LFO, and if the mod wheel is at 127, you get full LFO. And I have the LFO pointing at the filter only, so there's no vibrato, because again, you don't necessarily want vibrato in your bass sounds, but so this is the LFO completely, the mod wheel completely down. This is a pretty velocity sensitive patch too, by the way. Actually, I wonder if we can make this even more velocity sensitive. And this one maybe too, not quite as, this one as well actually. So the closer, to really get the, actually this one down a little bit, this one a little bit, this one like 61. This is gonna be, yeah, okay. So if you really hit it, you get a much buzzier attack. Much. Actually, let's do this one kind of the same here. It's getting better and better. So just tweaking the envelopes. So as the sequence plays here, I'm working the mod wheel. So you can see how that adds kind of a nice variation. You know what else we can do actually? Check this out. Let's put the mod wheel also to the resonance. And we'll make it go up. So resonance also goes up as we move the mod wheel up. So as that LFO dips the filter, it gets an even more extreme effect. And I don't know how often I would use that, but it does, you know, it's easy to build in. You don't have to use it. It's on the mod wheel. So if you don't like it, you never have to touch it. This is, to my ears, getting into pretty nice bass territory. It sounds realistic is probably not quite the right word, but it has some verisimilitude to a real bass sound, or to, you know, to a sound that might exist in you know, the real world, I should say, in nature. You hear this sort of, it's got a complex attack that drops off, and the drop off has some interesting tonality to it as well. I mean, really, we've just made kind of a nice plucked string tone, which FM is pretty good at, for sure. Arguably, I guess physical modeling is better at plucked string tones, but if you want to synthesize a plucked string tone, I would definitely say that you could do a lot worse than FM. FM would be, you know, amongst traditional synthesis approaches, so say wavetable, sample based, um, analog or virtual analog, FM, you know, that sort of maybe even additive selection. I would probably pick FM most of the time to do that. Although, you know, I mean, obviously, if sample based one is a little bit of a cheat, because if I sample an actual plucked string, then that's going to be pretty realistic, obviously. But generally speaking, I'm not a big sample-based synthesis has its uses for sure, but I'm never going to reach for that as my first selection. Probably if I'm doing actual synthesis. Now, if I'm sampling something and I just want to like get the sound of, you know, one instrument into another, you know, I just like, oh, I'm going to put this fake sounding bass guitar sample on my thing. I might sample one bass note and then just go with that, but most of the time I would, you know, I'm not trying to use a sampler. If I'm using a sample based thing, I'm doing something weird with it anyway. So I'm gonna call this getting late bass, because you know, we started off trying to do something like a lately bass, and we got in the neighborhood of a lately bass. And yeah, so, you know, getting late bass. What you know, what else can you ask for? We should do like a filter sweep. I think would be a cool thing to do here. Let's go ahead and go to instruments, fresh instance of Operator. Yeah, okay, so we got our amplitude envelope is here. And we want to take about 2.5 seconds to open. And better part of 2 seconds to get to its resting state. And we could also just close it. And we can loop. Okay. So as you can see here, we've got pretty good sweep going already. Can I decide what the most level of how complex we want it to be at its most complex point here. Let's see how that sits. There we go. Do something similar here. Loop this one as well. Just trying to get the right amount of juice to the signal here. Tell you what, let's do actually. Let's Okay, I was thinking about using the oscillator. LFO. Yeah, you know what? I think the thing I was gonna try here is not actually gonna work because this is the okay. Actually, this will work. Oscillator volume B. Turn all these off. Okay, so this will control our filter sweep. This is an alternate way of doing a filter sweep that I sort of come into. You can obviously do them with envelopes, which is what I was doing. But you can also do them with an LFO. Okay, hold on a sec. Gotta turn all these loops off. None. None. also need to turn off, or at least turn down, most of these velocities, because right now, if we don't whack them pretty good, we're not getting much at all. And so we'll have the sounding operator, i.e. 1, be fully velocity cognizant, but these a lot less so, because this is just a filter sweep. Like, you might want it to be a little louder or a little quieter, and you might want some minor variation. We'll put a little bit on here. But realistically, there we go. Isn't that nice? And let's see, can we, I want to say that there's not a lot right key. Oh, well, that's fun. Yeah. Yeah, so, bagpipe. Yeah, you can definitely get some suitably obnoxious bagpipe style sounds. From FM. And it's not clear to me if the LFO is retriggering or not. It sounds like it is. So it's starting in the same place each time. Yeah, this actually does have kind of a bagpipe tonality to it, doesn't it? Let's see, we can get to oscillator 4. We could also do, let's see here, LFO to LFO, destination B. Sadly, there's not. Yeah, okay. Guess I was hoping that now we got the use the filter a little bit as well, also controlled by the LFO. to kind of emphasize the sweep. It goes every 2 bars. Um, yeah, this is again. This is I think this is a good highlight of how you can use FM to kind of make some familiar but not quite the normal sounds that you make. Something with a little more, just a little more character, I guess, is really what you're talking about here. Um, but yeah, so I had promised some discussion of how I learn new synthesizers. And how I learn new synthesizers is basically what I'm doing right now. Um, so when I get a new synth, and I've had Operator for a little while, but um, I've really only started looking at it about, oh gosh, 6 or 8 months ago now, which obviously is a long time. I mean, I could be an expert on it. But when I was using it for my most recent album, which is currently in mixing, hopefully out within the next couple of months, I was just using the presets. I wasn't programming it at all. I just would flip through presets until I found something that I thought would work and just used it. And that was just a way for me to kind of get familiar um, with its sound, if you will, and also to because of the stage that I was in with that album. I was in the sort of arrangement stage. And that sounds pretty good, actually. And and that's just the default patch, but it still sounds pretty good. Sine waves sound good. Who knew? Yeah. So anyway, I was in that sort of stage of production where I wasn't writing. Everything was pretty much written. I was just producing, layering, um, cleaning some stuff up. And so mostly I was using Operator to layer underneath other synths and just using presets that were sort of complementary to things I already did. So now this is more like how I would use a synth from ground zero. That's not my normal way of doing it. That's just because of where it came in my production process last time. My normal way of familiarizing myself with the synth is to start programming it immediately. I mean, after I've unboxed it, let's say I come home and get it out of the box or install it or whatever, if it's a plugin. First thing I would do is flip through a few presets. I typically do not go through anything like the majority of them, though. Um, I would typically go through, maybe a few dozen, jump around some of the categories and kind of like hear a couple pads, hear a couple basses, hear a couple leads, just kind of get a sense of what it sounds like in front of me rather than on a demo or a YouTube video or whatever. But then the next thing I would do is zero out some patches and start programming some patches like I'm doing today. Some, again, those bread and butter patches, sort of basic stuff that you just know you're going to need to have around. Like I probably have 50 variations on that sort of later style bass, which is just to say a plucked bass that has a complex and somewhat dirty attack, and then smooths out to being like a saw square, a muted saw, a muted square, or maybe even just a sine wave for whatever sustain level. Got a lot of those. I got a lot of leads that are just like a square wave or a couple of square waves detuned depending on the synth, and et cetera, et cetera. And yeah, so I just kind of make, whenever I get a new synthesizer, I make some of those kind of sounds to just familiarize myself with the working of it and to create some stuff that I'll have for my next project. And again, like having, as you zero in on your sort of aesthetic vision and what your sound is, if you will, I think it's normal, healthy, important even to have a bunch of variations on similar sounds that you like. I mean, it's not to say it's not useful sometimes to have a bunch of stuff that sounds nothing like what you would do, but I think that that's where a lot of times presets can come in. Um, it can be pretty hard for you, an individual, to create good sounds that aren't the kind of thing that they use, because you don't always have the best judgment about how it would be used. Whereas if you're making the kind of sound that you use, you know exactly how you would use it. You know what kind of bass lines you program and whether or not, so you can play out when you're programming. You play a little sequence similar to one that you would use, and that tells you whether or not it's worth your while, or if you're wasting your time. Um, but yeah, so that's what I'm doing here, is just finding some sounds that are like what I might use. So we did a bass. So the sounds that I typically use, I use a lot of plucks, a lot of plucky sounds. Um, Obviously, you need basses all the time. My leads tend to be, I like the classic sustain style lead. I mean, if you look through like the lead presets on Pigments, for example, you'll find all sorts of different sort of sounds categorized as a lead. Weird plucks and non-sustained sounds and whatever. When I say lead, I typically do mean kind of an organ style lead, where it gets to maximum volume fairly quickly, if not immediately, sustains at max or near max volume, and then drops off, you know, relatively rapidly. Although, maybe it might linger depending on what the lead is. There's some variation to be had there, but that's usually what I'm going to mean with that. Polyphonic keys would be things that you intend to play chords on, whether it's sustained chords or rhythmic chords or whatever. It's kind of, those are different kind of sounds sometimes, or they can be the same sound. I mean, obviously on a piano you can play both sustained and percussive rhythmic uh, chords, strings as well. Like if you have a string section, you can play the long, drawn out harmonies, chords, or you can, short, almost percussive. And if you're plucking, you can get pizzicato stuff too. Yeah. Anyway, real world instruments can frequently be played multiple ways, is what I'm saying. So, same here. You can either make different sounds for different kind of playing styles, or you can, if you're skilled to the programming, you can make sounds that do both. Velocity sensitivity, or variations on the mod wheel, or if you have macro knobs, etc., etc. All of which are possibilities here. Um, and then pads is the next one, and those are like polyphonic key sounds that, although sometimes they are big enough that you only need a single note, um, they are there to, as the name suggests, pad or fill out the sound. Um, they frequently double the chords, or maybe you use them for the chords in certain sections, or you just play a root note or top of the chords that sort of just fills it out. Those would be one of the last things I would do, because a pad is typically, in this getting to know you process, because pads tend to have a little more going on, be a little more complex, so you kind of graduate to them. Sweeps, which I just did, I use a lot of those in my music, whether it's some kind of intro thing, or something that's going all through the whole tune alongside of the, whatever else is going on. I just like sweeps. I think they sound great. I think that they are, for my money, for my taste, a very core part of electronic music making. So I always make some sweeps. So let's see. So we got bass and leads, plucks, which can sometimes double as either basses or leads. Those are just short, typically either not sustained or low sustained sounds. Um, Use them for arpeggios, use them for, the polyphonic, which they usually would be. You can use them to double your chord sounds, yada yada. So then poly keys, then pads, sweeps, uh, effects. Those are not necessarily bread and butter sounds, but we would graduate to doing some effects after the pads. But yeah, so maybe we should make a lead sound. I have made a couple lead sounds on this already, but you can't have too many leads. We will. Okay, so we're going to turn off. I've got this in the 8. It's in algorithm 8 here, which is the dual stack. I think this is algorithm 5 on your TX81Z style synthesizer. Um, but as I mentioned last time I did this, I find this to be one of the most useful. This essentially just gives you two oscillators, two fairly complex oscillators. It's got two operator stacks, and each one of those can make a pretty wide variety of kind of core sounds there. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I mean, so sort of play off what you're saying there. I don't usually buy a new tool unless I have some idea of what it's going to be used for. I try not to anyway. Sometimes I definitely get suckered into buying things. Um, I get the gas a little bad. Uh, but if I like the way that something sounds and I feel that it clicks with my aesthetic, um, and it has something intriguing about it, like a control scheme, some programmability options, a unique blend of features. It's hard to say exactly what that might be, but something that sort of makes it stand out from the crowd. I mean, I admit most of the stuff that comes out, I look at, especially these days. 3 or 4 years ago when I was still building out my studio and still figuring out what I was all about, it was a little different, and I was a little more inclined to like go, oh, that's neat whenever anything new came out, and then sort of wonder how could I use this, or what might I use this for, or could I, is it just neat enough that I just want to have it, whether I have a use for it or not. Um, but these days, I am actually pretty dismissive of most gear. I see it and I go, yeah, okay, I don't know what I would use that for. I don't need that really. It's not so much what I don't know what I would use it for. It's given what I already have, I cannot imagine this is doing anything that I can't already cover one way or another. Um, when I have a lack, what do you call it? A lack of I want to do something and I just can't figure out how to do it with my own gear. Um, then obviously then I'm like, okay, maybe it's time to buy something. And yeah, just sometimes it's just fun just to buy stuff to play with it and figure out what it does. Um, but yeah, I even if you for me, even if I have a really good idea of what something is going to be used for when I buy it, um, like if I had bought Operator as a standalone thing, I'd have been like, oh well, obviously I'm going to use it for FM sounds, which is not super specific, but it's also not specific. Um, and it'd be like, okay, well, I think that's a safe bet. It's an FM sound. You can use it for FM sounds, but it's I wouldn't necessarily be like, oh, I'm going to use it for and I guess I should even say more than that. Like when I say FM sounds, I have an idea of what that means. I don't typically reach for FM for pads unless it's like one layer and a bigger pad. But for basses, for leads, for some sound effects and percussion sounds, stuff like that, then FM all the way for sure. So when I get it, I assume I'm going to be using it for stuff like that. But it's also a matter of like um, once you actually have it in front of you, that's when you find out what you're really doing with the dang thing. Okay, enough talking. Let's make some sounds. So we're looking at a lead sound here. So I got a 23. I got a short attack on the, so it doesn't just hit max volume immediately because I don't want the chunk at the beginning. Okay, so and got a similar deal here. Yeah, you know, I used to definitely actually be more like the thing, get the thing. These days, I definitely am not. I just, like, I didn't buy last year. What did I buy last year? I bought 2 software plugins. Um, I bought the Dream Synth, and I bought the Op6 native, which is say the software version of it, which I already had the hardware. Um, the Op6 native was really mostly just because it's so much easier to record into, you know, if you have it as software, and it just seemed like too convenient not to like spend the $50 to have it. And then also too, if for some reason my hardware were to bite the dust, I would still have that, and it's one of my favorite synths. So DreamSynth was the only new piece of gear I bought last year. I think I bought a DJ controller as well, but I didn't. It just basically went in I bought it for $20, and it just went in my closet. I played with it for like an hour, and then stuck it in my closet and forgot about it. So yeah, so I just bought DreamSynth last year. It definitely was a little bit of an impulse buy. It was a humble bundle deal, um, you know. But you know, the year before that, I tried not to buy much, but I absolutely failed. I bought 3 synthesizers the year before that, but they all did do things that nothing in my rig was currently capable of doing. It was um, I bought the Make Noise Strega and O-Coast, which are Strega in particular is a very distinctive and unusual synth. And then I also bought the Somatera, which is another very distinctive and unusual synth. But that's the kind of stuff I've been buying lately is pretty esoteric and unusual synthesizers or gear, and not just like normal stuff. But yeah. Anyway, so this is kind of a nice. Nice, almost square wave sound. I don't know that it actually is a square wave, but it's in that neighborhood. Let's just do. Kind of make something similar. I could just make it the same. Okay, so 4.7 milliseconds. 4.7. There it was. And 3, 1, make it minus 5.4. So this will make these to be identical. There we go. Except that they're detuned a little. You can hear that detuning. Sounds like it's a little too much. Yeah, so the detuning on these oscillators is kind of funky. So here, rather than as a detune thing. You could use it as a oscillator down or octave down, make it like a sub bass. I do kind of want to. It's an interesting sound, interesting chorusing sound. It's very organy though, that's actually probably more to do with the timbre. I just messed with these ratios a little bit, see if we can get something interesting. So I mean, it's not uninteresting. Well, that's kind of nice. There we go. Of vaguely squarish. All right. Yeah. And we can also so that's what we want. So open up. The filter, open it up. Decay. Actually, do the same, like 23-ish. Too much. I don't think we really need much resonance. That's kind of interesting, actually. So, oh, I see what's going on. I'm detuning the wrong one. That was kind of cool. All right, so I was being a dummy there. You'll have to forgive me. reason that the detune didn't sound right is because I was detuning. I wasn't actually detuning anything. I was detuning the first oscillator, but I should have been doing A and C, and I was doing A and D, so I was actually getting like some weird FM effects, in other words, and not detuning, which is what I was after. How much detuning do we want? Do we want this little bit here where it gets a little wonky? Kind of like that. Adds a little metallic element. I wonder if I can pitch envelope on. I wonder if I could. It doesn't look like it. Okay, that's fine. I have to admit, I kind of like that this synthesizer already adds velocity sensitivity on all of the operators. It adds a nice built-in, like, it's nice just to have some of this stuff going when you pick the thing up. It's kind of an interesting square-ish lead. With kind of a nice metallic tone to it. And okay, this we definitely want A and C, and we want this to be controlled by mod wheel LFO amount 100%. All right. Do we make this mono? Let's see, what if we use the aftertouch to add some drive? Question mark? Okay, I'm not even sure what that's all about. If we use to add some filter drive. Maybe we need to turn the filter drive on. A lot more subtle. Interesting. Here, pretty subtle. It's just not a very subtle effect, honestly. It's a sine sound. Even worse. It's even worse. So we need to do aftertouch to. Okay, no filter. Okay. I don't know if that's really doing anything. I guess we could just use it to open the filter up a little bit. There we go. Or maybe close it a little bit. Is that better? Maybe close it a little bit. And then also make the resonance go up. Oh, come on. That's a classic. We love that. We love it. Yep, that's what we want. Okay. So we have this kind of squarish metallic lead. There you go. So as you can see, these actually are some of the things that I've made so far. Some of these we actually made in the last session. You see, it's a really, I mean, okay, so another sweet, different kind of style. Now that is a really, see, this is FM, it gives you these, you're just not going to end up with a sound like this by layering basic waveforms. It's just something different. Now, if you don't like the sound that come out, I guess that doesn't mean jack shit, but that's one thing. If I mean, right? If you don't, if the tonalities of FM don't agree with you, and I get it. I like it just for the. It says rich pluck. It kind of has a brass sound. I might change the name of that actually. Let's call it pluck brass because it's kind of plucky. That's not a million miles different from so this one was an attempt to do something a little different, where I have each of the so as you can see, I have the you're only hearing one operator, and then the other three modulate it sort of in turn. I've got all their different envelopes kind of coming in and out at different times and looped. You can see there's that one. It's synced, synced, synced. So this one repeats every 3 bars. This is 1.5, and this is every 2. And these mix in different elements, modulators, to give it this sort of constantly shifting sound with the occasional boink in it. And that was my attempt to do something like wave sequencing via FM. So I made like, it looks like about 13 patches so far, which is, we're getting started here. We've hit most of the bases. So we've got some pluck sounds. And so plucks, basses. Maybe we could do another bass. Try and do like a growler bass. Now, what would be the way to go about this? I think maybe something like this. So this algorithm, we have C and B in a stack that modulate A, and then D over here on its own modulating A. And so we're going to get our main tone from C and B modulating A, and then we're going to try and get the growl maybe by D doing its own thing. Yeah, something like that. Let's see how this goes. Okay, so we can tune it an octave down. Doing that. That's when you do the one you're listening to down to 0.5. That's what you're doing, is tuning it an octave down. Okay, get some feedback on that one. Get some envelopes here. Right. This is what we're going to use through our suite. There we go. I'm getting into some growl territory there. Oh, that's a scream. Yeah, it's the algorithms definitely have a nice amount of variety in terms of the ways you can arrange them. It is worth noting, if anyone who might be watching this is curious, I did look. The original TX81Z and the DX27, DX100 that shared the same architecture with it have 8 algorithms, and this has 11. So this has 3 algorithms, 3 arrangements of operators that that other one doesn't. So, you can do a little bit more with this than you can with that. Not least, you also have, of course, a filter, these kind of spread options, and much more flexibility in terms of looping envelopes and the crazy waveforms and all that. So there's obviously quite a bit more. Quite a bit more going on here than there is with that generation of FM synthesizers. It's an interesting tone for sure. That's kind of cool, but definitely lacks some of the power. Let's see here. Now that's kind of interesting. Let's get that back down to 2. That's interesting. I don't know. All right, so I think this is something interesting. Maybe I need... Interesting. Let's see, what would I like to do differently for this thing? A little bit of drive there. Let's go to this mod matrix, velocity, to filter drive, just add a little. There we go. To if we can, if it would even sound good. Okay, so sorry, I should explain a little, say out loud what I'm doing. I know you can see it on screen, but sometimes it's hard to follow. I set the velocity to control the filter drive 50%, and then I set the filter drive to 3 dB. And as you can hear, really gives the high velocity notes. I wonder if we can a lot more bite. Maybe I need it even not quite. What's next? If I can do 2.3. No, 2, 3. No, that's way too high. 2.3. There we go. That seems good. Yeah, it seems like this would probably work, right? For some drum and bass. And maybe we can do some. It's definitely interesting hearing the different ways the LFO affects if you put it on all versus just some. Put that under control of the mod wheel. LFO amount 100%. And let's see, pitch bend maybe to filter drive, filter drive. Yeah, something like that. Kind of a growly, screamy, low indie kind of groovy thing. Okay, so, and and once again, I mean, you saw we played with a bunch of different ratios over time here, and what we ended up with was 1, 1, 1, and 2. A lot of times especially when we're trying to get something with a nice low fundamental, we have to that's wild. That's interesting too. There's a lot of depth here. You start poking around, and you will find that there are depths to be found. Connection B. Okay, so that was feedback, oscillator feedback. Kind of a nice swampy, screamy. We'll call it Swamp Thing bass. Yeah, there we go. Good times. Well, it looks like it's just you and me hanging out in here right now, and it is almost 2 hours since I started, and I probably should get some work done today. I guess, do you have anything, Swarm, that you want to see real quick before we go? I could try and whip something up real quick, or we could just say goodbye, hang out for a few minutes on the back end, and get ready for the rest of our day. Or I guess this is the end of your day, if I recall correctly. 12, 13. Oh, fun. So 13 sounds we've made. Probably half of those, maybe a little more than half of those on stream, and then the other half just me screwing around here in the evening. You got that's no worries. It's actually like I said, it's about time to wrap up anyway, so I totally get it. It's good to run into you, or rather to see you. Can't even speak. And yeah, I agree. Let's do it. I will catch you in the next one. Thank you for coming by. It has been a pleasure. Looks like we got a last minute joinee just in time to say goodbye. But hey, if you're the person that just joined the chat or just joined the room and you want to hang out and see some stuff, say hey, and I will hang out for another half hour or so and maybe do one more sound, especially if you have an idea of what you would like to see. Otherwise, I am probably going to wrap this up and say good night or good morning, depending on where you're at. Maybe good afternoon, even depending on where you're at. Actually, probably for most of the country, it's going to be good afternoon, except for my friends here in California. So I will give this other person, this quiet person in our chat, a second to say hello. But otherwise, I will probably just wrap this up here in the next 5 minutes. You can come and find me on Blue Sky as Ether Diver. You can find me on Mastodon as Ether Diver. You can find me on Tumblr as Ether Diver and Instagram as well. I think there's an underscore in the Instagram one because randomly someone had already grabbed that handle. I'm not going to be active on Instagram much longer though, so probably don't bother to come find me there. And I don't do jack shit on Tumblr either, except occasionally get very high and reblog a bunch of pictures that appeal to me. But Mastodon and Blue Sky are definitely good places to reach me. You can also find me at my website, etherdiver.com. You can find my how to program synthesizers program in there. It's work in progress, but right now I've just got the first two parts of subtractive. It's covering basically all the basics of subtractive synthesis. I've got a in-depth post about filters coming soon, maybe this week, and you can also find my Other People's Music series on there, where I write about other people's music, little capsule reviews, if you will, or write-ups. They're not exactly reviews. They're not critical. They're just highlighting the good stuff of different musicians, recent releases, or maybe not so recent releases. And yeah, you can find a bunch of patches that I made on Gumroad, also under the name Ether Diver, for the Micro Freak. And I'm going to put some of my pigments and other patches up there at some point. I've got about 100 Hydrasynth patches that I've made that I'll probably put up there at some point, and I'll put up these at some point, and I'll put up the pigments patches too at some point. So there's not that much there. Okay, I'm rambling. You get the message. You get the idea. It's been fun. I hope you learned something, enjoyed yourself, even just wasted some time that you wanted to waste. Whatever's clever. It's been fun, and I will see you in the next one, maybe this weekend, and if not, next Wednesday at the very latest. Until then.